Hello, everyone. I'm Roger Dev. I'm a senior architect at LexisNexis Risk Solutions, responsible for data lake analytics and machine learning. I'm also the product owner for HPC Systems' open source curation and governance system known as Tombolo. First, I'm going to discuss the importance of curation and governance for data lake providers and look at some of the principles involved. Then I'll do a very brief overview of HPCC Systems' open source data lake operating system. I'll talk about how we implement curation and governance within Tombolo, HPCC Systems' open source curation and governance system. And finally, I'll provide a view as to how we expect these capabilities to evolve and mature. Data lake technologies provide the most effective way to develop and manage data-intensive application suites. They provide rapid acquisition and ingestion of structured, unstructured, and semi-structured data, huge storage and compute capabilities, analytics at large scale, and rapid delivery of user functionality. With the success of a data lake, however, comes an increase in the depth and breadth of users, more demand for features, and an exponential growth in complexity. If not properly managed, that complexity can outgrow the ability of the team to manage it, leading to many unfortunate consequences. Data lakes are powerful, but also tend to be amorphous and opaque. As the complexity expands beyond the ability of the initial developers to manage it all, several types of breakdowns can occur. First, the complexity of the data and software can become too much to digest, and the pace of feature delivery can collapse under the weight. Or, critical problems can make their way into the production process, resulting in exposure of sensitive data, security breaches, loss of data integrity, or failure to maintain service levels. Either of these issues can cut short the data lake's success and severely damage the reputation of the organization. The growing complexity of a data lake needs to be carefully managed. Without attention to data lake structure, documentation, visibility, and control, a productive data lake can turn into a lifeless data swamp. The solution to these problems is not in better, faster data handling or enhanced analytics. These problems and solutions are organizational in nature and require tools to support the organization's infrastructure on which the data lake's continued success depends. The remedies for managing this complexity are curation and governance. Imagine a natural history museum without curation. They put all their artifacts in the middle of a huge warehouse, put some tables around the edge with microscopes, hammers and chisels, brushes, etc. Now visitors and research come in and are told everything you need is there. Just look in all the crates and you'll find the specimens you need. That would not be a very efficient setup. So curators come along and open each crate, catalog the contents, note what types of artifacts are in each, record where they were found and who found them. Then they organize the crates so that gems and minerals are in one section, fossils are in another. Then Precambrian fossils are moved to one end and modern animal fossils are moved to the other. Dinosaurs go in the middle. They also organize the tools so that they can be more easily found and utilized. And finally, they present their key assets in a way that are easily accessed by visitors. Likewise, our museum is interested in protecting its artifacts, as well as its researchers and visitors. They put up guardrails to make sure that the artifacts are protected, and that employees and visitors can't be hurt. They employ security personnel and make sure that as exhibits are upgraded, decommissioned, or new exhibits added, the safety and security is maintained. This is known as governance. Similarly, for a data lake, curation and governance are critically important as the complexity grows. A data lake is composed of data files and code files, and a new user entering the organization is often forced to open all the code files and understand the contents in order to figure out how the data lake works. This is not only an inefficient way to bring on new team members, but can result in a wrong or incomplete understanding of the data lake. A curation system allows for organization of all the assets so that the interested parties can more easily understand how the system works and how to locate areas of interest. Several different capabilities are needed in order to readily understand the workings of a data lake. For example, a user may want to browse the hierarchical structure of the data lake in order to understand the systems, subsystems, and assemblies that comprise the data lake. Or a user may have a particular target in mind, such as a file or process, and perform a global search for a given asset. These facilities are important, but in order to fully grasp the workings of that data lake, flow diagrams showing the full progress of data from ingestion to user delivery are necessary. Finally, curation should provide a single point to access all of the important tools needed by the engineers. Governance in a data lake is a wide area supporting processes to ensure the data lake's integrity and security while protecting access to data and compliance to legal, contractual, and ethical uses of the data. Data use compliance is a particularly challenging area. There are a variety of factors that constrain the ways in which data can be used or shared. There are many laws varying by locale that govern different types of data. In the United States, we have laws such as the Gramm-Leach-Bliley Act, GLBA, the Fair Credit Reporting Act, FCRA, the Health Insurance Portability and Accounting Act, HIPAA, and others that specify the conditions upon which certain information may be utilized. It's important that data containing these types of information be tagged and monitored right down to the field level. There are also contractual restrictions. Data that is licensed from third parties almost always comes with limitations on its use and distribution. These restrictions may occur at the file level or at the field level. Failure to comply with these restrictions may result in loss of access to the data or legal repercussions. Finally, there are ethical and company policy restrictions. Even without legal or contractual guidelines, an organization must be sensitive regarding the effects of data that they share. Consider the case of an exercise device company that anonymously shared the position and activity of its users. It was found that it inadvertently provided information about the movement of personnel on military bases that could have been harmful to national security. I separate policy and ethical constraints because the data lake providers must be sensitive to ethical or perception issues even before they're encoded into policy. Let's look at some of the roles associated with data lake curation and governance. Data engineers are the builders of the data lake. They're responsible for defining and implementing the processes for developing the data needed for the targeted applications. They provide the testing of their data flows and they produce documentation of their work. The documentation that they provide forms the basis for the curation effort. If their documentation is done in the context of a curation system, then it will likely be easily accessible and very useful for the organization. Compliance engineers are responsible for developing the processes and procedures that define the evolution of the data lake. They will implement various checkpoints to ensure that checks and procedures are faithfully executed. One of the challenging areas for compliance engineers is data use compliance. They must understand the various laws, contracts, policies, and other exposures, communicate those needs to the data engineers, and ensure that those constraints are properly enforced. Larger and more mature data lakes may employ curators, whose job it is to ensure that the data lake's documentation quality is maintained. They establish documentation policies, review the documentation provided by data engineers, enhance it as needed, and fill in gaps between the documentation provided by the data engineers. They ensure that the documentation is up to date, covers the required information, and is organized for ease of access. Next, we'll take a quick peek at the HPCC systems data lake platform so that we can understand how the Tombolo curation and governance system complements it. The HPCC systems data lake platform is a free open source data lake operating system, supporting some of the world's largest and most widely used data lakes. It runs natively on the cloud or on in-house systems. It has a unique end-to-end design, providing a single environment controlling the collection, ingestion, deep enrichment, and delivery of values to end users. It is proven and robust, able to handle huge workloads while maintaining strict quality of service. And it scales to handle thousands of data sources, many billions of data records, and hundreds of millions of queries per hour. It does this by transparently distributing workloads across tens, hundreds, or even thousands of computer nodes. It handles all the heavy lifting, processing huge streams of data in parallel, performing complex analytic transformations, and rapidly delivering data to various end user applications. A few talented individuals using the platform can rapidly produce amazing results and introduce new functionality at a rapid pace. If you'd like to learn more about the platform, there's a vast amount of material available at hpccsystems.com. Now we'll talk about curation and governance with Tombolo. Tombolo is a perfect complement to the HPCC platform. While HPCC focuses on high-performance computing, Tombolo focuses on increasing the transparency of the data lake to make it more understandable and supporting the controlled evolution of the data lake as it becomes ever more complicated. A single Tombolo instance can be used to manage multiple data lakes and many HPCC systems clusters. A Tombolo instance supports multi-tenancy, allowing a large data lake to be run as multiple administrative domains or applications with shared or separate personnel in each. Tombolo can be run independently of the HPCC systems platform, but in its deep integration to the platform, it really shines. Tombolo is an open source curation and governance system, tightly integrated with the HPCC platform, automatically extracting any metadata information contained there in order to support curation and governance with minimal effort. Effective governance requires automation of processes so that they can be performed reliably and consistently. In addition to curation and governance, Tombolo will serve as an integration platform for the data lakes development and administration tools, making them readily available to all parties. The essence of curation is to present information so as to make it easy to find what you're interested in and easy to understand what you found. Tombolo's curation facility can be used in a design mode, designing and specifying the data lake before it's implemented, or a live mode, describing an already existing data lake. When used in a design mode, assets can be incrementally converted to live as they are implemented in the data lake. At the point of conversion, the detailed information from the implementation is automatically pulled into Tombolo. Tombolo allows users to browse the content of the data lake in a hierarchical fashion, showing systems, subsystems, assemblies, and assets. Or a user that's looking for a particular asset can do a global search on any set of terms to locate the asset along with its hierarchical context. Each asset, such as files, processes, indexes, and queries, are pre-populated with a rich set of information from the platform. In the case of processes, that information includes its inputs and output files and the actual ECL code that defines the transformation it embodies. ECL is a primary language associated with HPCC, and it defines the transformations in a declarative context so that they're independent of the actual implementation of the code that forms those transformations. In the case of files, it includes the schema with field definitions and allows viewing contents of the files. In addition to this pre-populated data, Tombolo also allows for a structured document for each asset, using the Markdown language to produce professional documentation. This documentation can extend down to the field level for files. A documentation compiler allows PDF documentation sets to be produced for the whole system or any level of the hierarchy. Another very important view shows the various workflows within the data lake. These visual charts show the various flows of data and control across the data lake, complementing the structural views with a dynamic end-to-end perspective. These are easily created by dragging and dropping processes. The connections between them and their inputs and output files are automatically shown. These workflows even allow insertion of manual steps, such as approvals, into the data flow. Flows established within the data lake can be passively monitored by Tombolo, or can be established and run under Tombolo's control. From the government's perspective, Tombolo supports systems integrity by monitoring each execution of defined workflows and notifying designated users if any errors occur. Each execution is logged, including timings, so that both hard and soft problems can be spotted. Tombolo also supports governance by recording the source of each data element and with whom it is shared. It also tracks the responsible parties for ensuring compliance for that element. Data usage is controlled by establishing usage constraints. These constraints may represent legal, contractual, or policy constraints and may be attached at a file level or a field level. Each constraint may provide detailed descriptions and references. These constraints are then propagated across files as the data is transformed, analyzed, and enriched. Tombolo assists compliance engineers by monitoring changes in the data lake that might expose constrained data. This starts by establishing a baseline taken at the time of the last compliance review. Before a release is committed, Tombolo will produce a potential risk report, identifying areas where changes may have inadvertently exposed constrained data. While the current Tombolo system provides a good amount of support for compliance engineers, future versions will allow enforcement of compliance procedures. In order to achieve that, Tombolo will expand to control the full data lake lifecycle, such as promoting versions from development to quality assurance to production. This DevOps-like approach will not only reduce the friction and improve the integrity while promoting a version, but it will also allow insertion of compliance checkpoints and issue resolution into the process. Our constraint propagation will become finer grained with detailed analysis of the transformations at each step with regard to the defined constraints. This will give compliance engineering a detailed map of identified issues that require resolution before proceeding to the next lifecycle step. If you'd like more information on the HPCC Systems platform or Tombolo, please see the HPCC Systems website. Or you can access the source code distributions on GitHub at the links below. Yesterday, my associate Bob Foreman gave a talk and a workshop that you may be interested in replaying. His talk is entitled HPCC Systems, the Kit and Caboodle for Big Data and Data Science. And the workshop is Relational Dataset Analytics for Clear Customer Insights. Thank you for your time and attention, and enjoy your evening.